It requires active participation. You don't just sit there and take notes like she said. And that in itself is a major difference between like sitting and taking notes and a UDL classroom. The method engages students into their work to accomplish the group task, so you don't have to be the one person, sitting there doing nothing. Like, you need to contribute to your team. I have a short attention span. I do not like taking notes, so classes with note-taking become doodling, falling asleep, like fighting with myself to stay up. So the UDL dynamic is always upbeat. Everyone's always participating, talking. One in the classroom you have a debate, the other one you have like people doing research, making a poster and whatnot. So there's always a task to complete, and this keeps me up and on to the next project.
Hi, my name is Josh. I'd say one of the primary differences is mainly the manner in which you learn. In your traditional classroom, you sit in rows, you pay attention to the teacher's doing or try and pay attention, and in the end you just end up regurgitating it on a test. Whereas in the UDL methodology, you're put in an environment where you're forced to work with your peers whether you want to or not, for the better. Where you have to do the research yourself and where you actually have to learn and be able to show that you understand the material. There is no opportunity for you to BS your way through the course. It actually forces you to learn the material, and I think that everyone really benefits from that, because instead of you just learning how to memorize things, which a lot of people can't do, everyone can work with their individual strengths and do well.
When I'm in a conversation with Jed, it also forces me to think deeper. And what I mean think deeper is in a normal class where you write down stuff, you just think of what's on the textbook and that's what it is. But when I go to his class, I think of, everyday life. So I think of the news. Like, I don't watch the news every day, but let's just say I hear on the radio something happened, and I could probably relate that to his class during the time we have that interview.
I'm going to use the example of when I was in geography. Geography is a subject that didn't fascinate me whatsoever. When I found out that we all had to take that class, I was honestly wanted to start crying. However, with the UDL classroom, it allowed us to actually, like I said previously, it allowed you to actually do your research and learn from it. But when the challenge was that even though it wasn't a subject that fascinated you, you had to put every effort, every soul, and everything you had to do into that subject to learn about it, because in the end you had to go and tell your teacher about it. You couldn't just memorize and then just write on a test what the textbook said. You actually had to research it and say, even though I don't like this subject, it's dreadful, I hate it, you still have to go and tell your teacher. It was a challenge. However, I still remember things in that classroom 2 years ago that if it was just a textbook, I probably would have never remembered at all. So
I appreciate the diversity of exposure we get to different types of tasks, whether it be doing a play, which is one of my personal weaknesses, or doing a painting. It forces you to go out of your comfort zone in order to get the task done, but giving more than one choice also allows those people within the group to collaborate and choose what they're going to do based on their own strengths and weaknesses, but it also puts absolutely everyone out of their comfort zone over the course of the year. I think that's really important to get that diversity of classwork, of method, just so you actually gain appreciation for the way other people do things. Sorry.
Well, if everybody could, if they could do it well, of course, because it's still going to be good classes. Everybody's not going to go to sleep, everybody's going to pay attention. It's just going to be good classes everywhere. It's a short answer, but I would just say yes.
I'd be in heaven. No, but I think it'd be great because I do so much better in a classroom like this, because just trying to memorize the subject is tough for me. Depends on the subject, but it's tough. So I think if every teacher could, they should.
UDL program does make me think deeper than I normally do in a normal classroom, like a stereotypical classroom. For sure, I think deeper because, I gotta think of everyday things to compare, because you don't always, during an interview.
Conference?
Yeah, conference. You don't always have to talk about these, 90% of the time you're supposed to talk about what you're supposed to talk about, but you're also, what I tend to do is I tend to compare the subject with something I experienced or what I've heard. And I don't do that in other classes. So that makes me think of more about the world, so more existential. I think a bit deeper in what I'm about to think.
Well, for me, when you're working in a group setting, everybody's going to have a different opinion. So you might say your opinion, but then someone else says theirs. And then you're kind of thinking, well, like now you're thinking about their opinion, so it might change your thought. So now you have to go in and you have to think a little deeper and think about you're getting all these different opinions, and now you're really thinking, okay, which one is which is there a better one, or which one actually works better, or yeah, so.
I think in your typical classroom, we take information too much at face value. We don't try and analyze it or create hypothesis, or I don't know the word for that. We don't try and take it a little further. We just want to get the information, remember it, and then regurgitate it, as previously stated. Whereas in the UDL model, you're working with people who might not necessarily agree with you, so it comes down to forming opinions, thus doing more research in order to validate them, and overall learning more about the topic than you necessarily would in the usual classroom.
I'm just pretty much going to say the same thing as they said. It for sure requires deeper thinking because math, they give you a formula, you insert the numbers, that's it, that's all. But in the UDL method, you have to think of the cause and consequences. Like Jacques said, you do compare a lot. You have to have examples, give examples, you have to find the differences. That's a lot in our grade d'évaluation. There are
Rubrics?
Yeah, in our rubrics, there are, some of them ask you to compare the subject to something else, find the similarities and the differences. So like Josh said, you do research even more than you normally would from just a packet of notes that your teacher does give you. And you sometimes, I'm very competitive, so if someone has a different opinion, I will do a lot of research to see whether I'm right or I'm wrong, and that just, it's just beneficial for everyone.
Back to answer your question to what I had said before. For example, in biology, when the teacher asks a question, I love biology, I could spend hours in that class. When they ask a question, and if I know the answer, it's that answer, and you just answer it. Like kind of Josh said, you don't analyze in other typical classrooms, you don't analyze the answer. So hands down, I think probably 100 times deeper in a UDL classroom. Not that I don't love the other classes, however, yes, you do think 10 times deeper because you have to analyze it and you have to compare to different life situations. In math, like Janelle said, the answer is right there, the formula, the answer, done. You don't compare it to something else. In biology, what is that? You just say it and be done. You don't analyze it. So in a UDL classroom, it forces you to compare it to other lifestyle events. So you have to think in order to be able to analyze your answer. So yeah.